Now I'd love to invite Anthony Miller over, and Dr. Al-Sabti, he only used half of your time. So.
Well, thank you so much. It really is a pleasure and an honor to be able to join you today and to talk about human capital and the role of education. As you heard in Prince Faisal's comments, the importance of human capital and education and the Saudi government's commitment to that is very important, and it mirrors what we are trying to do here in the United States. And as we had a chance to meet and to begin the discussion last night over dinner, it became very clear that the opportunity to collaborate, to share lessons learned, and to be partners as we both try to address some of these challenges is a rich and very real one. I'll keep my comments relatively brief. There's a few kind of key themes I'd just like to highlight. One is to reinforce the importance of human capital and the role of education. Again, we cite it, but I think here in the United States, it's putting an exclamation point behind it, because part of what we're trying to do as we move to change and improve our educational system is to mobilize the many stakeholders, be it in the public sector, government, policymakers at the state level and at the local level, but also parents, students themselves, the teachers and principals in our schools, the business community that's a recipient. And so it's making sure we have a shared understanding of the role of education in human capital. Next, to clarify that the challenges we face here in this country are just as real and significant as challenges that are being faced in Saudi Arabia and across the world. And it's with that common sense of mission as well as the challenges where there's opportunity for collaboration. Briefly, I'll highlight some of the changes in our approach that provides the context, and you can see the similarities. And then lastly, I'll just to try to illustrate what I think are how this translates to real opportunities for the business community, given the theme of business opportunities between our countries. One very briefly, the importance of human capital. In our current economy, which is a challenge one, we see the importance of human capital and the link to economic prosperity has never been greater. Has never been greater. First of all, if you look at the current employment statistics, if you have a higher education degree, your unemployment rate in this country is less than 5%. However, if you don't have a high school diploma, you have well over 3 times the unemployment rate. And so the link between education and employment is significant. The link between education and income is equal. If you have education, it is directly correlated with earnings. If you've only had a high school degree, you've actually had a real decline in earnings, in your wages, in real terms, over the last 20 years. Where if you've had a college degree, college can be any, not just a 4-year baccalaureate degree, but any post-secondary degree, your wages would have been approximately 70% higher. In the course of lifetime earnings in this country, that represents about $1 million differential. So even in this current environment where people are challenged, where clearly the cost of higher education have risen, when we are faced with the question of, is it worth it to go to college? Is it worth it to invest in education? The answer is emphatically, absolutely yes. But it's not just about economic prosperity. If you think about the ongoing impact to households, we find that households whose parents have, in fact, where one or more of them have received higher education, they're more likely to have higher income, and their children are more likely to complete high school and go on to college. And the reverse is also true. So we think education is linked to economic prosperity, it's important to social stability, and it's important to national and global security. So with that and recognizing that, I think we have to be very humbled by our current performance here in the United States. We recognize that while we once considered ourselves, in fact, we were leading the world in terms of the quality of the education, that in fact that status has been challenged. We now rank 16th in the world in terms of college graduates. The percent of our workforce from 25 to 34 who have a college degree ranks 16th in the world, roughly 41% of our workforce. As we look at the K through 12 system, We see that our 15-year-olds, as they compare against other 15-year-olds around the world, rank 15th, 17th, and 25th, respectively, in language arts, in science, and in math. And so if we look at how well our education system is preparing our future generation to be full participants in our global economy, I think we see real gaps. We also see gaps in terms of the disparity across different racial, ethnic, and socioeconomic status. We talk about it being the achievement gap. And despite our aspirations to close the achievement gap, it stubbornly persists. And so we often say education in this country is the civil rights issue of our generation. We must improve access and the quality of education for all if we're really to fulfill our mission. So with that as context, what's been our approach and what's the basis of collaboration? I think as you heard, there is no silver bullet, and I think we need to embrace the holistic reform, the reform of the system holistically if we're really to be successful. We simply coined it a cradle-to-career strategy, and what that means is starting at the cradle, right, before kindergarten. The reality is if our youth don't actually arrive in kindergarten ready to learn, the achievement gap that starts as early as kindergarten stubbornly persists. Our K-12 system, right, is not adequately prepared. We have not found the key to closing that achievement gap if students don't come to kindergarten ready and kind of master language arts by the time they're 9 years old. So we must invest in early learning. The evidence is compelling that in terms of the best investment you can make, right, clearly investing in improving the quality of early learning is an important one. So with us, that's been the purview from a government policy. It's often been the purview of our health ministry. And so we are in partnership with our health ministry to say, how can we not just think about the emotional and social development and care of a child, but how do we think about their intellectual and cognitive development? And so a significant effort, the career. Let's go to the other end of the spectrum in terms of from the cradle to the career. We're committed to improving the access, the affordability, and the quality of our higher education system. Clearly, a strength in the U.S. is our higher education system. But the challenge is how do we make sure, especially in these fiscal times, that it remains affordable and accessible for all? With that, we're committed to significant financial resources in the terms of Pell Grants and student aid to ensure that some of our most disadvantaged students from a socioeconomic standpoint will have a chance to not let their social status preclude them to access to a higher education. And it's never been greater. I mean, forecasts predict that as much as 60% of the jobs of the future will require some type of post-secondary degree. And so we need to provide pathways to students leaving high school to participate in those opportunities by securing a certificate, 2-year associate's degree, or a 4-year baccalaureate's degree that can then also lead to higher education. But we also need to increase the completion, because frankly, one of the challenges we have is that many who enter college while it's the gym don't exit college with their degrees. In our 2-year system of community colleges, 75% who enter don't ultimately get the degree within 6 years. Right? The vast majority do not actually get there and complete their degree. That's a challenge we have in a time where we have challenged resources and we need to increase productivity. Even in our 4-year baccalaureate programs, right, the completion rate can be between 50 and 60%. So we need to continue to increase not just the access and affordability for all, but also to increase the persistency so we can increase completion rates for high quality degrees. When we get to the core of our K-12 system, here is where what you've heard really mirrors what we're trying to do in the United States. One, it's recognizing that in a 21st century global economy, you need to have 21st century academic standards. We need to ensure that as you exit the K-12 system, you truly have a set of skills that will allow you to be globally relevant. And that can mean going on to college or to a post-secondary education. It can mean going on into a career. But the reality is, in our decentralized system, we have standards set across 50 states and various U.S. territories that don't consistently ensure students are learning at that level. So we must ensure we have high academic standards. We must have an assessment system that that allows us to assess not just the specific math or language arts knowledge, but do they actually have the 21st century skills? We need to have a data system that allows for continuous learning. We need to have an investment in human capital of our teachers and our principals, because human capital matters. Just as it matters for the economy, it matters acutely in our education system. We need to make sure that we have community-based schools and we engage community. And we need to ensure that the STEM fields are emphasized, but not at the expense of a well-rounded education. We still need to have a well-rounded education, but we've got to make sure we have a technology-literate population. And we need to adopt new technologies, the innovation, so that we can have more personalized learning to ensure that we have learning for all. So that is, at a high level, what our agenda is meant to accomplish. We're trying to marshal our resources to provide the incentives, to build the capacity in the system to do so, because we do operate in a very decentralized system where at the federal level, in K-12, we provide less than 10% of the resources. But we can provide our policy influence and incentives to help encourage and build out the reforms that we think are needed. With that, the role of business, the role of collaboration between our countries, we think is rich. We think business has a clear stake in this game. All too many employers today talk about how, unfortunately, they still struggle. They still struggle to find workers with the right set of skills. And so it's engaging business to partner to ensure that the standards are of a high capacity, to ensure that career pathways are developed with the education system, and to help invest in their local communities to support education is critical. I think there's an opportunity for direct investment in these innovative technologies that can foster knowledge development and knowledge sharing both within the country and across our two countries. And we believe it's engaging. It's engaging the broad public because, again, it's realizing that if human capital is critical to the knowledge economy and that the role of education is critical to developing human capital, that then we all have a stake in the ongoing success, and the role of business is as equal as anyone else's. Thank you.
Thank you, Tony.